Many sites in the Holy Land have a luxurious mausoleum dedicated to a Muslim, Christian, or Roman figure. But these three impressive monuments are associated with Jewish characters. Welcome to the Kidron Valley.
We are now in the Kidron Valley, also known as the Josaphat Valley or King's Valley. This is the eastern border to Jerusalem from ancient times. And as we know, Jews don't bury in the city limits. So this becomes burial grounds for Jews from First Temple period onwards to Second Temple period and onwards until this very day. The Kidron Valley is mentioned in the book of Samuel. When David has to flee his rebellious son Absalom, he crosses the Kidron Valley in this direction. Another place it's mentioned is in the book of Kings, when Solomon tells Shimei, the son of Gera, that he has to stay put in Jerusalem and he cannot leave it. This is mentioned as the border he cannot cross, the Kidron Valley.
Perhaps the most striking monument here is the tomb of Absalom. Carved out of rock, this monument is 19 meters high.
This design is definitely a typical design for the Roman period here in Jerusalem. It has a combination of classic Hellenistic and Roman architecture together with some Egyptian elements combined in one.
Absalom is described as the rebel son of King David, who forced David to flee and almost took over the united Israeli kingdom. In the book of Samuel, Absalom orders the construction of a huge monument to himself. And they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very giant heap of stones upon him. And all Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and is called unto this day, Absalom's Place. But this monument is associated with the 1st century CE.
In Christian tradition, there are a number of figures who are traditionally buried here. One of them was Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist.
In 2003, anthropologist Josaphat from the Hebrew University deciphered an inscription on Absalom's tomb, which emphasizes the theory that this is where Zechariah, father of John the Baptist, is buried, and perhaps other figures from the New Testament as well.
This finding is very important to Christianity, and I think to the history of Jerusalem as well, because first of all, we know the existence from literary sources of these tombs and of these individuals, but we never knew exactly where they were buried. And now we have evidence going back to the 4th century that perhaps this was the tomb of Zechariah, Shimon, and we hope that perhaps James as well.
A close look at Absalom's tomb shows us the unique architecture which goes hand in hand with Jewish philosophy that separates the body and the soul.
Nefesh is a Hebrew word which literally means soul. So this is a memory to the person's soul. Sometimes it came to be in the Hellenistic period where you had a separation between body and soul, that the tomb was for the physical body and the nefesh was for the soul.
But just a few meters away from Absalom's tomb, we can also see another impressive monument, the tomb of the sons of Hazir.
What we see is an entrance to a cave. There are chambers inside with burial tombs for Jews here in the times of the Second Temple. We can see the architecture is classic architecture, Greek architecture, and that should have been all we could have said about this burial tomb here. But fate had it that this one has an inscription of who is buried in this cave. And it mentions a family of priests from the Second Temple period by the names of the sons of Hazir. Same family is mentioned in the book of Nehemiah and in the book of Chronicles as a family that signed the covenant of Nehemiah with their seal, their personal seal. So we know that this is a very important family in the Second Temple period right here in Jerusalem.
The third monument here is Zechariah's tomb, and as opposed to the other monuments, it's completely carved out of solid rock. The tomb here dates back to the late Hellenistic period, but tradition ties this site to one of the other tragic stories of the Bible, a story mentioned in the book of Chronicles.
The story tells us in the Bible that Zechariah the priest came and told the people of Israel that they had forsaken their God and that it won't succeed, and that for this he was stoned by the people of Israel in the temple itself. This was an outrageous story. Later on, Jewish texts in the Talmud and other Jewish sources will come and say that his blood was still boiling in the temple itself when the Babylonians will come and destroy Jerusalem. That maybe even his blood is part of the reason the Babylonians come and destroy Jerusalem, because of the evils done in Jerusalem.
Right below the Mount of Olives, the Kidron Valley was a substantial burial site for Jews and Christians. It's also mentioned in the New Testament as one of the areas that Jesus passed on his way to Bethany. One way or another, it's one of the most interesting and remarkable burial sites in the Holy Land.
Memorial Day is one of the most difficult days of the year for Israelis who have lost loved ones. The grief, the pain, the memories come rushing back. Dealing with how to cope with trauma is one of the most exciting and new